weigh-in podcast, and on this week's weigh-in podcast episode, we're going to bring to you Jake Paul versus Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. And then we're going to bring to you Shakur Stevenson has also scheduled a fight. So we're going to bring to you the happenings, the what's, the nows of boxing this episode, because there is a lot going down and a lot going down soon. And it is going to be with this nice updated schedule, with all the boxing going on. And that is just what we're going to be able to bring to you guys this week. So let's kick into it. So if we get right off and we start off with this Jake Paul. Actually, we'll save Jake for last. We get off and talk about this Shakur Stevenson. Shakur Stevenson is a very well-rounded boxer. So now we take a look at this scheduling for Shakur, this scheduling that he has done here. So let's see. Shakur Stevenson is going to fight July 12th. William Zepeda. Zepeda. But we're going to call him William since we can't get that last name right to further not mispronounce it. He's going to fight William. And, have I seen and then you got a title eliminator fight as well on that same card. So a venue has not been announced yet for Shakur, but that's, is set in the works. It's in the works. When we look at Shakur Stevenson, when we talk about that lightweight, when we go ahead, we're gonna yeah. Let me go ahead and pull up that boxing rank. You know how it is. I'm always pulling up this boxing rank. So let's go ahead and get that boxing rank up real quick. And just in that time and sense, you look at that lightweight weight class. Man, if they would all clash against each other, we said this before. That's a really good looking weight class. It's a really good looking weight class for many of reasons. For many of reasons, that's a good looking weight class. Many different reasons. There's a reason why we call that a good looking, I would say a good looking broad. There's a reason why. Because when you look at that and you look at who's got what belt and where what belt is gonna out and all of that, it kind of just, you put yourself in a lucrative place where you understand that this is gonna get tight. So, when we talk about that lightweight, we talk about the IBF champions, Vasily Lomachenko. As you all know, we got Gervonta Davis with that WBA. We've got Shakur Stevenson and William Zepdard. William's got that interim. Then when we look at that WBO, we got Keyshawn Davis. So really, we got a lot of guys here, and the latest weight class crasher, as I will say, is Lamont Roach. So Lamont Roach already clashed with Tank, as we needed two for that, and now Lamont Roach is the weight class crasher here. Now William looks good, in terms of where he stands. You're the WBC interim, and then you're number one according to Boxing Scene. You're the number one under Gervonta Davis with the WBA. So that's potentially a two belt take. But listen, I don't think William is like that. That is just how I feel. But I also have not seen him box. So when we talk about that Shakur Stevenson event and that William event, we're talking about something that's of a magnitude of, okay, this is something that might come out really good, or it may not come out really good. It just all depends, because what we learned from Lamont Roach is that if the person wants it enough, it's possible to go in there and I'm not saying beat the guy, because Lamont Roach, you know, according to judging scorecard, was a tie. So you didn't beat Tank, but Tank didn't beat you. So when you look at that and you say, okay, well, just about anybody can go down. Shakur Stevenson can go down. But it's a wonder if they start doing some things that you see in some of these high level crafts of boxers, they're running from those lost matchups. Are you going to run from those lost matchups? Why have we not seen certain things scheduled, like big fights that we want to see scheduled? They just you can see some of them, you could see where they're running from it. Like, why have we not gotten David Benavidez Canelo? Too many failed negotiations. I feel like, who's running, right? Who's running? You kind of get in there about that who's running kind of thing here. Because what we want is to see, two weight classes of high prospect clash. We want to see a clash. We want to see that clash get going. We want to see everything that we need to see for ourselves get going. That's just, that's just the best I could bring to that. We want to see, I mean, I want to see Benavidez Canelo, and I sure hope I'm not the only one that wants to see Benavidez Canelo, because that is a magnitude of a fight that would be absolutely amazing to see. When you look at that magnitude of a fight and you look at something like that, that's a huge fight to make. That's big fight. When we talk about making that, when we talk about having a fight made like that, above that magnitude, people may not agree with me on that being a big fight, but let me tell you, I think it's a big fight. It's a big fight. It's big. Because why? Well, I'll tell you why. Because look at the magnitude. Benavidez says, I can beat Canelo. I can do it. I can do this. I can do that. And then you have Canelo, who is at the top. Right now, we may get close to having it. But remember, we're about to get this Canelo Terrence Crawford, which is going to look real good. Because, if it turns into Crawford season, Canelo is going to get beat. You know, it all depends on what happens in the way the fights lay out. That's the best thing I'm trying to look for here, is the way those fights are going to lay out. What's the way we're going to see some of these fights lay out? Because there is a way. If it turns into Crawford season, I don't think Canelo stands a chance, because we all know what he did to Earl Spence Jr. I understand that was a while ago, but we can't forget it. That if that guy come back, if that then Canelo's in trouble, because the true craftsmanship of Terrence Buck Crawford is, it's something to see. So when you really look at that and you look at what is in hand and going there, is just, you're gonna see a lot. You're gonna see a lot, and I say that because there's gonna be a lot to be seen for it too. You look at that and you say Terrence Crawford, he won it. 2 weight classes undisputed. The men's have never had 3. I think he's in line to say, hey, let me undispute that third. And that is something that'd be great to see. Get a third undispute. As recently we saw it in the women's, but we did not see it in the men's. So I kind of want to see that third weight class undispute. This is something that a lot of greats can't touch. Floyd Money Mayweather never undisputed a weight class. Floyd never undisputed over there. And there's a lot. It's not just Floyd. I'm not saying that Mayweather is just the only one. There's a lot of boxers that did not undispute. So when you think about that, there's a lot of them that didn't undispute. And when you say stuff like that, people always want to make the money, but there are people that want to make money and there are people that want to make history. And I won't say that's not my quote. I read that somewhere. I don't remember where, but I read that somewhere. There are people that are going to want to make money, and there are people that are going to want to make history. Being undisputed is history, collecting all the belts. That's proving that you own the weight class. Not just holding WBC or WBA belt multiple times. It's taking over the weight class. And that's why I say the clashing at that lightweight when it takes place, because it will at some point. There's no way it doesn't. There's no way unless someone starts running, because we almost had Vasily Lomachenko and Tank previously last year. So if Vasily Lomachenko and Tank clash, okay, now we got now one person, either or, no matter who wins, has two belts. Now you're going to start to see the other side. So it's going to get pretty interesting the way we see that lightweight. I know we talked about that lightweight on this podcast before. And when you look at the lightweight, and them staying away from each other, not clashing quite yet, it makes it a little more interesting now, because we're seeing these fights, we're seeing these belts defended, but we're not seeing what we want to see. What we want to see right now is that lightweight clash, that lightweight. Let's see Lomachenko versus Shakur, or Lomachenko Tank. Let's try to get these belts. I want one guy sitting with two belts. I want another guy sitting with two belts, so we could clash it up, so we can make a mega star for our fight here, and look at that and say this is a mega fight that we're gonna produce here, because we got two guys that have belts, that have two belts, and we're gonna make a winner undisputed. That, I feel like myself, is great fights. It's great boxing, because when you look at that, you're like, oh, somebody's coming away undisputed. They're gonna leave it in this ring, all in that ring. You're gonna have two guys that don't wanna give up their straps, their belts, their crowns, and you're gonna, in a sense, see that and then say, okay, now we got another guy who may be on the outside, who may get the next fight and say, wow, I'm gonna fight somebody who's undisputed. I either get this guy or that guy. You may, negotiations can always fail, as we learned from Canelo and David Benavidez. But when you look at that magnitude and you say, wow, the amount of, I think no matter who clashes in that lightweight, I think every last one of them is a big fight. Shakur Tank, big fight. Shakur Lomachenko, I feel like, is a big fight. Keyshawn Davis Tank, big fight. Keyshawn Davis and Shakur Stevenson, big fight. Keyshawn Davis Lomachenko, I feel like I feel like that will bring it. I feel like that'll bring it. So when you look at that and you think about that, that's what's dangerous right there. When that clashing happens, because it's coming. It's coming. They can't all run from it. It's coming. One person over there is gonna want to snatch another strap, and that's when it's gonna start. It's gonna start. One person gonna get two, and you know what? It depends, because if we get Lamont Roach Tank again, and Lamont Roach puts the work in again and finally gets him, I think Lamont Roach is gonna be that weight class crasher, because I think he's going to come in and crash all of it, take all the belts he wants. Because when you look at the way somebody is, not too many foes can get in that ring with Tank. Not too many of them can get in that ring with Tank and do what Lamont Roach did. And when I say not too many of them, I don't know another individual that would have gone in there. We give credit to Cruz when he fought Tank. He wasn't getting knocked out. So we talk about stuff like that, but in all seriousness, if Lamont Roach decides he wants one of them belts, he gonna get it. He gonna get it. I don't, and that's to anybody in that weight class. I feel like if it's Loma, if it's Tank, we already saw what happened with Tank. Shakur, Keyshawn, I'm gonna give Tank, I'm gonna give that weight class some credit. I kind of felt like, with all with the way Tank was in the media workout, that he kind of felt like it was another walkthrough, and I feel like, it wasn't. So I feel like if he gets himself right, and prepare right, I'm not saying he didn't prepare right for that fight, but if he get himself right, come in there, that media workout and say, no, this ain't just roll out of bed. This serious. I think he's more dangerous. I think you're gonna have a harder fight if you're Lamont Roach. And I think anybody in there. I don't think Lamont gonna walk through anybody, because it's not gonna happen. I think if it's anybody you talk about that could potentially be not walked through but be beat really well, you talk about Shakur Stevenson. Shakur Stevenson likes to get hit. He likes to, you could see, a lot of times in some of his fights, he takes a lot of punches. So that could potentially be something. But I think all the guys in the weight class, if you're Roach coming up, it's not going to be easy. But you fight Tank again, you take down Tank, you got a good looking resume. Even with just beating Tank, you would have a good looking resume to say I can take out the rest of the weight class. And that, even then, you still got big fights. The clashing that's gonna happen there, you still have a big fight because now you would have had, let's say, in theory that Roach does get that done. Now you're gonna have Roach, Shakur. That'll be good. Think about that. Now you're gonna have Roach, Lomachenko. That'll be good. Roach versus Keyshawn Davis. Now you talk. That'll be good. But for us to even see, and it doesn't matter if he doesn't beat Tank or not, because either way, if it's Tank, you still have what I believe is big fights, left and right, big fights. So when we talk about that, we talk about a lot of that happening. So now if we jump into the problem child, let's talk about it. Let's talk about it here. The El Gallo, as they now call him, Jake Paul has now scheduled another fight. Jake Paul. It's been a while since we've said that name on this pod, but now we have Jake Paul versus Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. So let's right off the bat, I'm gonna say right off the bat, Cesar Chavez, you're not gonna win that. I have no faith that Cesar Chavez is gonna win that fight at all. At all. I just don't think Julio Cesar Chavez has what it takes. We're talking about Jake Paul here, who is trying to make sure he takes out every weight class. You know, we're talking about Jake Paul here, who is hungry to want to make himself ranked. And right now, as we asked, he answered the call by scheduling a boxer. That's scheduling another boxer. So, when we talk about that, that's something that we get to look at. So when we run over this, we talk about the words of Oscar de la Hoya. Imagine if Jake Paul hurts Chavez Jr. It's something Canelo couldn't do. Even Jake Paul said, I'm going against a former champion who con man Canelo couldn't finish. So when we talk about that, we talk about a lot of backing in this Jake Paul corner. A lot of backing in that Jake Paul corner. So now it wonders the question, does Oscar De La Hoya want to see Canelo Jake Paul? Think about that. Does Oscar De La Hoya want to see Canelo Jake Paul? I think so. So now we go about that. Well, for Jake, worry about what's in front of you. You got Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. I don't think Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. is going to have any chance to beat Jake. But that doesn't mean you take it lightly. As we learned from Tank Lamont Roach, you still don't take it lightly. You still don't take it lightly. But you do take it seriousness. You do take it seriousness because now we know what's going on. We know what's going to happen. We know a lot. We know what we need to know. We know what we need to know. So with that being said, and we know what we need to know, I think that Jake Paul is going to be able to do what we need him to do. Jake going to do what we need him to do, and that is finish Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. That is the great part. I feel like Jake's gonna do what we need him to do, and that's all that's gonna matter here. Jake gonna finish him. Jake gonna put him out. Jake gonna show him why you're in Jake Paul's game now. You're in Jake Paul's field now. Don't expect, that you're gonna get through this. Because it's not gonna happen, You're in Jake Paul's field now, and let's see if you could make something out of it. Let's see what we can make out of it. What will come of this Jake Paul fight? What will fade out of this Jake Paul fight? What can we see that we have not already seen? This is something of a magnitude that when you think about it, when you think about this magnitude, this is something that we want to see. This is something that we want to take over. This is something that we want to see Paul do, and that is Paul go in there and finish Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. Go in there, finish him like you did Nick Robinson. Finish him like you did Ben Askren, and finish him like you did Tyrone Woodley. That's what we want to see. We want to see him finish. There are many more that were finished. We just want to see him finished. Go in there and finish him. And that's what we want to see, because Paul, he wants to be, as he says multiple times, he wants to be a boxing world champion. But the only way you get there is by fighting boxers. Now you got a name that holds some weight. Julio Cesar Chavez Jr.'s father was a great boxer. Very well, one of the boxing greats, And when you look at Chavez Jr., you're trying to fight on to keep that legacy going. You've got to show why you can do that. Just that, When you look at, many could say he's not living up to the expectations, but it doesn't matter whether he is or he isn't. What's going to matter here is if he can finish Jake Paul. And I don't think that's even possible. I don't think so. I don't think it's possible for him to finish Jake Paul. And I don't think it's possible for many's of two reasons. Many's being that to finish Jake Paul, you've got to figure out how to outsmart Jake Paul and beat Jake Paul. You can't do it. Jake Paul's got that power between those hands. I feel that is able to, and why so many have been stopped. Even Tommy Fury was on the canvas. So you talk about you could talk about all his fighters, at least at some point, or most, have hit the canvas at some point. And when you say that, you got to say that this is something that is interesting, And it's interesting because Julio Cesar has a long family history that is deep rooted in boxing. That's something that you have to say to yourself. Where is that? What is that we want to do? What is the thing we might want to do? Where do we want to take that? Because that's something that is just deep, deep, to be able to look at Cesar Chavez and say, hey, that is not a fight family. That is not a boxing family. It definitely is a boxing family. It definitely is a fight family. And that's because Julio Cesar Chavez Jr.'s father was an amazing boxer. And when you look at that and you say, okay, here's the son, you look at his reign and you look at it is not of a similar fashion, and it's just that one thing where you look at this and you say, wow, it's not where it needs to be. It's not what you thought it was going to be. But at this time, we can't speculate what we think it's going to or not going to be. This is something of a magnitude where we're looking at this and we're saying Jake Paul, we're not going to say if given the chance, because many would say if given the chance, will finish Julio Cesar. No, Jake Paul's going to finish Julio Cesar Jr. You don't know what you're getting into. You think that Jake Paul is just he's the wannabe YouTube boxer. No, 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 no. He's not a wannabe. No. No. A wannabe may get in the ring once, maybe twice, maybe again, maybe. But a boxer's they don't do that. He's not a wannabe. You know, he's got his own promotion company. He's got a fight resume that might have more celebrities on there, but it doesn't matter. There are boxers on there. Tommy Fury. Now we've got Julio Cesar Chavez that we're gonna add to that resume. Whether he beat Tommy Fury or not, it was still a boxer. It was still a boxer. And in all else, a wannabe doesn't set up a promotion and sign Amanda Serrano and line up the biggest fight that we. Well, I mean, I'd love to see it. Amanda versus Katie Taylor. You know, a wannabe doesn't sign multiple chance boxers to become undisputed. A wannabe doesn't go get a huge expensive fight outfit, doesn't set up his own gym. No, no, no. That's not a wannabe anymore. That's a professional. That's a boxer. That's no matter what anybody wants to say, he's been at this game year after year. That's no longer a wannabe. No. That wannabe is gone now. That's a boxer. Put him in the ring. Why you think Canelo and him can't get to a fight? Because Canelo sees Jake as a joke? Huh. Or does Canelo see another loss at sight? I'm not saying any which way that event would go. I'm going to stay in the middle on the fence. But don't tell me some of these guys. Now, there are a lot of boxers that said they would line up Jake Paul. They want Jake Paul. Do we know if whether they actually meant it? Who knows? But Jake ain't no wannabe no more. He don't want to be. He is. Now, he wants to be a world champion. He will get there. Just has not yet. This Jake Paul story is gonna. Those chapters aren't finished being written yet. They're still being written. Those chapters aren't done yet. Not for Jake. Mm-mm. The book is only getting longer, bigger, and stronger. And that's because Jake is lining up fight after 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 fight to prove he's the man. That's what Jake is trying to do here. Jake is trying to prove that he once again can do what he needs to do. That he can do what everybody's been looking for. And that is a star. Jake, it brings the money. You can't say Jake hasn't done what he needs to do. Jake has been doing. He's been lining the fights up. Now that we got Julio Cesar, I say it again, like I said with Tommy. No more actors or anybody. I want straight boxers now, professionals now. So after Cesar, line somebody else up. Boxer, then boxing. It's their career. And that's the likelihood would be let's get Canelo. But we all know how that's gonna go. We all know that asking for that is not gonna be easy. You know, Asking for a magnitude of that fight is not gonna be easy in any way, shape, or form. To say we won Jake. you know, in any way, you look at that and you say, hey, we want Jake Paul up against Canelo, but will we get it? That's on Canelo, Jake, I figure that's on both of them, really. Jake will try and set it up, but you figure Canelo will probably run from the fight. And last time he didn't, I got to give him credit, man. That fight was very well almost set. So I got to give a little more credit to Canelo. I think, I think we're a lot closer to that fight than most think, and that's the interesting part here. That is very, very interesting here. So with that being said, we're drawing near the end. I thank you for coming on the Epi. It's nice to see you on the Epi. Uh, you know, so thank you for coming on and like, comment, subscribe, share. And with that being said, this is the weigh-in by Ben Rochester and normally Sebastian Romero, but we will return to our regularly scheduled program soon. Weigh in out.